What's going on, Philadelphia? I have got a question for you. Do you feel like you, me, maybe even the Philadelphia Eagles fan base overreacts way too much of the importance of QB2, of the backup quarterback position? Because I'm sitting there last Friday night, I'm looking at Kenny Pickett and Tanner Mckee, and I am disappointed for a bunch of different reasons. One, probably the same things that were confirmed in your head were confirmed in mine. Kenny Pickett's bad. The Eagles spent a decent amount to get him here. And yes, I understand the reasons, Discord beat reporter Mike. I understand that he's cheap. I understand it wasn't a second-round pick necessarily for a former starter to back up your MVP candidate in Jalen Hurts. I get all that. But, man, I think it's super important. One, I mean, this is kind of in my head because Nick Foles retired this week. You know that, or last week, sorry. But I keep thinking about the only Super Bowl that the Philadelphia Eagles have won, and that was from a backup quarterback. Not from Randall Cunningham, not from Donovan McNabb, not from Carson Wentz, not from Sam Bradford, not from any starter that you could possibly name in the Philadelphia Eagles history has won a Super Bowl, unless you're counting NFL championships, and everybody knows if you do that, you've lost the argument, okay? So I don't think we pay enough attention to it, simply based on the history and, well, you know where I am with my crazy mind in the 2QB system, and I'm not using this particular episode to talk about that again, but if you want to jump in our Discord, I can tell you why that's almost necessary in today's NFL. But besides all of that, just having another starter, I don't even know if it should be referred to backup anymore, and I wouldn't even consider Nick Foles a backup quarterback. To me, he is a flex starter. And maybe that's just marketing to twist up backup quarterback. So I get that. And if you're laughing at it, I'm just not on your side on that one. I do believe there are guys like that. I do think Tanner Mckee kind of has that moxie when he's cheering guys on the sideline. And he looks like a dude to me that could be in a huddle with everybody else and say, I love you guys. Or first of all, I love you guys. Now let's go win the Super Bowl. I could see him in that. But I don't see the talent. I wouldn't even say, like, maybe his arm is comparable to Nick Foles. And even then, I would say Tanner zips it in there a lot faster than Nick Foles does. And that's neither here nor there. The point is, neither one of those guys to me look like they could end up picking up the reins from Jalen Hurts and going on a streak of 4 or 5 games. And that's me even saying, as a person that has very high hopes for Tanner Mckee and probably needs another year before he's completely solidified in that. But I do have to say I was really impressed with the lateral movement, his pocket movement, decision-making. Even though some of the throws didn't really get there, he's trying to throw guys open and like dog shit guys open. And I understand Kenny Pickett was dealing with the same thing. And I don't really think Kenny Pickett played that bad. It was just like watching a fucking sundial trying to go to work and throw a football at the same time, right? You wouldn't expect Kenny Pickett to pick me up and throw me across the room at 1,000,000 miles an hour because, one, I'm a heavy-set fella and he's got hobbit hands. So how would that work? But when he does pick up a pigskin, I do expect him to zip it in there, you know? And I'm not seeing either one of that. So I'm calling penalty number 1 and probably the only penalty of the offseason on Howie Roseman, Kenny Pickett seems to be like a major mistake in terms of what they're paying for, what they're actually getting. And if he goes in there, it's going to look like a 27-play drive almost every time that the Eagles offense is out there, you know? And analyzing these things, I don't think is a bad thing in general, because here's another thing I don't understand about being a fan of the NFL and probably just who's ever in control of every single roster in the NFL. Why is it not thought of as two people could play the position as quarterback? And I'm not saying on the field at the same time. I'm saying Why is it always we need to find a cheap guy who's nowhere near our starter, and good luck, have fun, hopefully the rest of the guys take care of it. Like, rarely does that work out in that sense. You know, even as I'm sitting here defending Nick Foles and calling him a flex starter and all this other different, there is no way someone would value what he does in clutch situations to pay him enough, like, to do that. Rosters aren't maneuvered to do that, but man, like, there is a backup quarterback that goes in, or a flex starter, hopefully, that goes in to a game every single year. The starter never makes it through unless you're an Iron Man like Jalen Hurts or Jason Kelsey, and pain is just French bread, and you keep eating that shit and going back out onto the field. I just don't understand why it's not an acceptable thing, like replacing a guard. You know, you need a there's many high-level guards. There's a couple of high-level tackles that are behind one another. Like the backup is always going to be not as good as the starter, otherwise you'd be getting starter money. But if you're paying younger quarterbacks to come in here and feel like they can compete to flip them, a la like Andy Reid used to do, I don't think the Eagles are doing enough of that. Okay? I'm just pointing this out. You may think that the Kenny Pickett trade is amazing, but man, listen to me. If that guy started in the NFL for 2 years already, and I'm not expecting a $50 million quarterback to walk through there, but I am expecting that man to kick the hell out of Tanner Mckee, and it's not even close. It's even. At best, it's even. And who knows if you're there every day seeing Tanner Mckee zip it in there to A.J. Brown if he gets an opportunity every now and again, which probably is close to zero. And no matter how much I'm bitching about this roster in terms of the quarterback room probably has a zero chance of changing in terms of that. So even if Tanner Mckee beats out Kenny Pickett, it's not going to matter. I think it's crazy that you're not drafting a quarterback in the third round every year. I think it's crazy. It's the same type of number that you have for Kenny Pickett right now, and now I'm being told this is a smart thing to do when you could do this in the draft every single year and get return of that third-round pick from all the other different moves you make and all the comp picks that you collect from year to year. Pick a quarterback mandatorily every year in the third round. Where is that fucking QB factory that we were promised when Jalen Hurts was here? I don't see it anywhere. I see a bunch of guys around a locker room, and it's just kind of like the wide receiver 3 and linebacker with this team. They just kind of throw a name out there, you know? And I'm not saying that they don't care about QB2. They're trying to make the best out of a very tight roster where you just paid the more important guys on this team, and I understand it from a broader perspective, but to sit here and accept like, hey, this is great, and Howie Roseman made a great trade with Kenny Pickett. I can't sit here as Nick Foles retires with a straight face and go, this team is in good hands if something happens to Jalen Hurts. And you're sitting there telling me, John, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I'm just going to keep pointing to that beautiful statue of Nick Foles, which has an ugly Bud Light logo, but a beautiful picture of Doug Peterson, okay? So I don't know. Am I overreacting? Maybe a little. But in terms of this 20 billion game schedule that Roger Goodell cannot wait to get out in the near future and add 4 billion wildcard rounds of TV and Amazon and everybody else lets him for programming and whatever, I don't think the Eagles nor the fan base do a very good job of putting the correct value on the flex starter, QB2, second starter, as I like to try and find. However you want to define it. I don't care how you define it. But this can no longer just be an insurance policy anymore. It has to be able to win you ball games immediately or win you picks because you've developed a great quarterback out of Wisconsin or Montana or fuck you state. I don't care from where, but you need to get this cycle. And I know that the Packers are very unique. They've had 2 MVPs that have both turned out to be dickheads. And Jordan Love, looks like he's going to work himself out and actually break the dickhead cycle, which is really nice too. But, who knows? We'll give it time. Maybe the cheese curds get to everybody's brain in there and then everybody goes psycho. But, and by the way, there's a lot of people that love Jordan Love over Jalen Hurts. So I'm excited to see how that kind of pans out. But that works. Jordan Love was not ready in year 2, even though he was picked high. Why aren't you doing that with your QB cycle? And I don't give a shit if QB1 gets upset that you're trying to constantly have somebody in the pen at all times. Like Father Time is undefeated, however you feel about that, and someone getting injured is going to happen. How serious it is? Yes, absolutely. No one really knows, but I would like to feel comfortable about Jalen Hurts sitting one out because he knows it's in good hands, and also I'm not here to take your job because your bank account says so. We are way past that point now, And if anything, if Jalen Hurts is to feel threatened by even a Justin Fields, who we know can't throw for shit, but can throw bombs and run very quickly with Saquon, that seems like a perfect marriage to me. And if that would bother Jalen, he'd probably just find a way to get better. Much like, by the way, pivoting now for just a tiny bit, and I won't spend too much time on this, but did you read Tim McManus' article last week? I know there was a lot of people talking about it, but man, it confirmed everything that you and I have been thinking over this entire, beginning last October into the offseason. And it's funny to me how everyone has reacted from the national media standpoint on that article on Jalen and Nick and that whole relationship. And if you're hearing that story for the first time, I think that's very daunting when you're looking at it. But whether it's been a little bit of information or rumorville or stuff we're saying back and forth through the Discord, which Cato is constantly questioning and Barney and Ryan are constantly fighting about, and Taboo's calming everybody down. Sorry for all the inside jokes, but that's why you got to be there. I'm past it because we've talked about Jalen and Nick so much. Even me saying that is not to. I heard a few people kind of pipe up when Tim McManus released that article and say, "Hey, this is nothing new in here." No, there's tons of new stuff in there. So many details in terms of where it all kind of went wrong, why it went wrong, and the 2 or 3 biggest things that kind of stuck out to me. One, you definitely saw already, was the fact that Jalen Hurts called Wink Martindale last year after the Giants beat the shit out of us in Week 18, and then subsequently so did Tampa. But he called Wink Martindale because he was leaving the Giants, and I think by that point we knew he was going to Michigan to be the defensive coordinator for a long time, and just wanted to know more about, how the hell did you beat us so bad with those blitzes? And I'm sure Wink Martindale didn't say this in the article, but probably just chuckled a little bit and being like, dude, I know everything that you are doing. Tell your coach I can see everything. I thought that was infinitely cool of Jalen Hurts. Very Michael Jordan-ish, and even some people got upset about me saying that on Twitter as well. But you can find me, by the way, at John Barchard, at Bell and the Bird. If you ever want to chirp on the social media, I'd be happy to. The other 2 things that I thought were the most important there is, one, were you just as surprised as I was to see Jalen Hurts be the one to, why aren't we running more crossers, more middle of the field stuff? Why aren't we making A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith live off of slants? Can we please do something to alleviate a lot of this? I think some people were chirping about, the run game in there as well. So, again, it looks as if Jalen and A.J. and a bunch of others were being like, dude, what the fuck are we doing? And if this was still going on, I think all the national media would have a sane reaction to this in terms of oh yeah, this is really bad. I was betting on the Eagles going to the Super Bowl. Now I'm not so sure. But in that, the second biggest piece in that article, at least for me, was the fact that Nick Sirianni in a team meeting kind of came out in that and addressed all of last season and put it all on himself. And I even saw Nick's temperament during his press conferences for the practices here coming up for the Patriots. And all basically training camp, his temperament has been that of I know I screwed up. I'm still here to work hard. Kellen's in charge, basically. I'm going to let him be in charge. This is what I'm good at. See you later. And people have interpreted that in a bunch of different ways. If Nick Sirianni was still one, that's why he kept the job. I think that's why. If you wanted to know what Jeffrey Lurie and Nick Sirianni talked about, that. Like, hey, I can't do this anymore, and it's been provable twice. I gave it up to Shane. We got better. It came back to me. It got worse. To anybody that had two pairs of eyes could have seen that, and now we're moving into a phase where Nick is going to be your Mike Tomlin, speaking of the Steelers, and kind of be the CEO of the 50 to 65 odd dudes that he sees on the practice field every day, who has no power over the roster. Will never have that, and neither would Doug Peterson. Nobody will. So, again, this is not – I know the narrative for Nick Sirianni, he's a puppet, he has no power, and that is all true. And that is true of Doug Peterson. That was true of everybody that has come by if your name wasn't Chip Kelly. And since that time, no one's getting in the door. They use collaborative effort as a word. They use all these other different things. But this team is coached, run by, picked by, handpicked, and – playing time minutes is established by Howie Roseman, his front office squad, and Jeffrey Lurie with the paychecks. That is how it's run. And if you can teach and mold and be a motivator and humble and all of that, that is what does earn respect in the locker room. And a couple of people in that article said that. Now, you could be looking at this from a perspective like, of course that's going to come out. The Eagles want to give their perspective of it and say, hey, yes, we acknowledge that this is all bullshit. Yes, it's not all going to be smiles from here, but we're here to do a job and go win. And I think that had to happen, It was inevitable. And despite all my tinfoil hat theories with, speaking of Matt Patricia and all that, like, I don't know where that falls. But clearly, they wanted Vic Fangio for a long time. And it just seemed like Brian Johnson was a placeholder, too. If you want me to be honest. For whatever reasons, I don't know. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was just the straight-up Jonathan Gannon situation overall. But however you want to slice it, Nick Sirianni acknowledged it and wants to move on, and so does everybody else, except for Hasson Reddick, of course, which is quite funny. I'm going to get to that in a second, but the last thing I had on this was, I don't think that article shifted any bad vibes, and if anything, then you're looking at that and going, oh, man, it's actually worse than I thought. I don't think I have the same perspective you do after reading that. There's plenty of new details in there that are showing me we need to fix this, and we need to fix this quickly, and whatever other rumors that we have heard through this offseason, I'm not dismissing them, but everybody got paid. Jalen got paid, and everybody is mostly happy that they're going to stay together and try to win some Super Bowls for what seems to be the next 4 to 5 years, which is amazing, along with Jordan Mailata in that mix too. So, they're going to get over it, and they're not going to have dinner, and I don't know if Nick Sirianni is going to be here or not, and if Kellen Moore kicks ass and ends up leaving, that's good too. By the way, I'm fucking sick and tired of hearing that. I know people have squashed that already, but, seriously, it doesn't matter if an offensive coordinator leaves. That's a good thing. It means it'll constantly cycle with fresh new ideas now that they've all experienced this, because why would you ever want to go through this again? A guaranteed lull year. No way. They're probably going to have an overload of offensive coordinators from fucking high school to the littlest college towns in Montana to everywhere to try and join their staff and eventually either grow up it or just be ready next time. They were not ready. I'd be pissed off too with losing the Super Bowl and trying to get back, and that's true of every NFL team who's ever tried to do that. So, it's not going to be an issue. It's just there's always going to be up and downs every time that you are trying to win a fucking Super Bowl every year. And if you expected them to do well last year, I don't know, man. It's just it was always going to be a battle. Another mirror image of, speaking of Nick Foles this week, 2018 was a battle, but they got through it, and they, you know what fucking happened. I think that's what we're getting to here. And I'm going to go back to Hasson Reddick again, because this situation has gotten utterly hilarious. Utterly hilarious. The Jets are now willing to trade Hasson Reddick because the buttoned-up version of this, if you don't know it by now, the Eagles trade him for a conditional pick a conditional third rounder this year, which could be a second rounder based on snaps. Hasson Reddick thinks he's going to get paid. He's not getting paid, and in fact, they reject the first offer that the Jets give him. The Jets believe that he is okay putting those talks aside or putting money aside and saying, we'll figure this out. I'm going to go to OTA. I'm going to go to training camp. I'm here to play. That is not the case. Hasson Reddick is not touching one blade of grass until his contract is taken care of. I think everybody was kind of calling each other's bluff, and Joe Douglas in the end decides, yeah, fuck it, get out of here. And same with Hasson Reddick too. Yeah, get me out of here. And I know a lot of people have thought it, and I've thought it too, and I tweeted this out yesterday, and I still believe that the Eagles should do this. They should go offer the Jets a 6th or a 7th in 2027. 28, some absurd thing. Bring that man back into the building, because now you've taken Bryce Huff away from them. You've gotten a net gain on a player. I mean, I'm not saying anybody really wants Hasson Reddick around, and you can kind of read between the lines there. You know, there were some accusations of him just kind of chasing sacks last year. Maybe not a good team guy overall. Could explain his player history, all that. I get all that. But now, whether it's Bryce Huff leading or Hasson Reddick backing up or vice versa, if you're willing to take on and maneuvering the cap room he has to come back, and he wants to come back, absolutely. And if you're one of those people that's saying, no, John, especially Cato in the Discord, no, this is ridiculous. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Hasson Reddick has, and maybe I'm reading his market wrong now, but at this point, everyone's cap room is basically done. The positions have been spoken for in terms of starters, and to be able to get Hasson back here in the rotation, and if he says anything to Howie Roseman is saying, like, look, I get it, you were right, no one was willing to do this, this got messed up, or like my agent messed it up, or I messed up, or however he wants to phrase and say, I'm going to shut up, I'm going to come back to Philadelphia, I'm going to play my ass off because I want to enter free agency next year, and maybe you can get another return from me. Maybe you can get another return from me, Howard. Maybe you can sell me to the Chicago Bears for a 6th or a 5th or whatever, and get me back as a player, sign me for maybe a little less money. I have no idea how his contract works, so if this is too far-fetched, you let me know. But to me, that seems like another opportunity to bring that man home, calm him down, and say, go out there and get fucking 15 sacks and go get paid. I would knock on the door to see if it's possible. I know it sounds maybe like a long shot, but the Jets aren't holding on to him, and yet again, there's that asshole showing up, that MVP asshole. Wherever he goes, there's problems, and I still don't know how the fuck Joe Douglas had so much quote-unquote respect throughout the league to get to this point. And if he's trying to hold on to this job for dear life, he's doing a great job because he just listened to the owner and like doing whatever. That's what it looks like to me. But I keep coming back. How did we get there? How did we get to a point where this man could have possibly helped construct and did help construct an Eagles Super Bowl roster, and we all said, oh, man, Howie's going to go up to a bigger level and not do personnel anymore, and Joe Douglas completely flops on his face ever since he stepped out. You notice that? Pretty much everybody that Howie Roseman works with. I always thought people were going to be a bigger influence, and just the dude, whatever they're doing, and the analytics department, that's pretty much it. Like I said before, they're not only running that side of the ball, they've had the deal-making side locked down for a very, very long time. From paying their own players to not dealing with this Hasson Reddick drama shit, because it would totally distract this locker room. It absolutely would, and I am so glad he's doing it up there and trying to get paid, and I have no problem with Hasson doing it because I don't know the full story. Obviously, he's taking some accountability in this as well, but man, what a disaster for the Jets, huh? I would welcome him back. And the other thing that I'm truly excited for, besides geeking out about the QB2 position, is one, I think I have undersold myself how good this DB room is in general. Between Ringo, Mitchell obviously looked great against the Ravens, and I hope that continues. I expected him to have a little bit of trouble going in and out between nickel and the outset. I know Vic Fangio was talking a lot about that this week. The biggest reason I think that happened is, one, the man that just got activated today on Tuesday, Cooper DeJean, who I haven't talked much about because, well, he hasn't seen the field. And I'm an Iowa guy, but that talented young man has not seen the field for quite a long time. And I don't think this is the greatest news for him. And for a lot of people that assumed that he wanted to, or was going to be, I should say, in that top 25 or even top 30 pick, this is a big reason why, not only the time off, but now we're getting into a little bit of injury history, and he hasn't played a snap in a long time. Now he's got to learn a Vic Fangio a defense, And you even heard him say that, definitely Cooper DeJean is going to be molded into a safety, and I kind of hope that we see those steps this week, because otherwise, outside of me believing that there is going to be a real fight at CB2, despite, I think, Isaiah Rodgers looking really solid, you can tell that there's some rust there, and we'll give him some time, obviously, to get his sea legs under him. And it was kind of cool to see him so grateful to be back and all that, and rooting for him to, obviously have a kick-ass season. But I do think there's a significant chance that he just doesn't start right away. I do think he'll be more or less in the rotation. He'll certainly be there in dime. And something obviously has to be going on, because Vic Fangio had to smile through James Bradbury saying, he's doing pretty good at safety considering he's old as dirt, got burned as a CB, and we're trying to figure out a way to get his ass out of here. But until that happens, I'm gonna smile about it. So, yeah, those were, I thought the secondary played great, and I do have. I'm gonna save this for another pod this week. I'll probably come out not only with a reaction pod to the Patriots game and everything on Thursday, but over the weekend too. I do want to dive into. Maybe I'm a tyranny worried about Jordan Davis now. That was my big overreaction from this week as well. Besides QB2, and a couple of you actually were giving me your overreactions to all of this, and man, David Ramos, my good favorite friend of all time, who came out to a really dinky studio when we were first starting Bill and the Birdman, and we fell in love with each other, and now we're falling out of love because he says my boy Jordan Davis is dead. It's over. It's washed. It's done. Do you feel that way? I'm going to get into it next episode. I'm going to reserve. Well, you know where I stand. I don't think that at all, but I'm going to dive deep into that in a little bit. So I hope Jordan has a really good week. Honestly, Jalen Carter, the same. I think I'm getting sucked in a little bit here to the Vic Fangio vanilla defense, and I hope that's the case here, because I did not see a lot of push and pull from the defensive line, and I still wonder if Vic doesn't really like the personnel, and we'll see a lot of different tinkering, as he's been very vocal about inside linebacker, and I think that showed up a little bit too, just in terms of depth. I'm a little more worried about the defense than maybe I originally thought. So I'm going to let that play out for a couple of weeks. And also, along with talking about Jordan Davis, I am severely overdue for asking a bunch of questions that people had in the Discord, which I think is great. I just wanted to give it its own time and clarity, and I tried a version of it, and it just wasn't that great. So I'm going to answer a bunch of questions on why the pod stopped last year, kind of the history of BGN Radio rolled into one, because I think both of those things are pretty significant. That'll be tagged with an announcement, hopefully, in the next week or so. Some really cool pod news that I'm excited to share with you. And we'll get into a bunch of other stuff, including trying to figure out how to get Verizon to properly stream on game days so I can, yell and watch with you on YouTube and stuff like that. So I'm excited for that. I will catch you in the next couple of days. I have a couple more episodes to get out, and early next week as well. So I'm excited that you're here. Join us in the Discord. Join us anywhere on social, at John Barchard, at Bell and the Bird on Instagram and Twitter. And I will see you in a couple of days right here on Bell and the Birdman. Okay, bye.